The Batman is a film. An obvious statement, I know, but in recent years many blockbuster superhero films have felt bland and uninspired when it comes to their filmmaking. Movies like Civil War and Infinity War, while having captivating stories, don't have shots that linger in your mind for days after you watch the movie. Instead of being filmed meticulously, the shots are found on a computer after the movie has already been filmed. The Batman is different. In each shot, you can feel Matt Reeves' and cinematographer Greg Fraser's blood, sweat, and tears. The Batman is unlike any movie I have seen in a long time, and if you haven't watched it, go see it. You will not regret it. This movie has made me want to inject every piece of Batman content straight into my bloodstream while listening to the main theme on repeat. All 3 hours of this film are a delight that had me grinning ear to ear. I'm not kidding. For the first 10 minutes of the movie, I couldn't wipe this stupid smile off my face. This movie ignited a Batman fire that has been lacking for me in recent years. With the lack of games and good Batman movies, anyone who doesn't read the comics has been in a drought. This movie cures that drought and then dumps even more water on top of you. With a 3-hour runtime, movies can tend to drag. Avengers Endgame, which had a similarly long runtime, definitely bored me at times. By the time Hulk showed up, I felt bored and only picked up near the end of the movie. Batman is nothing like this. If you tied me to that chair and made me watch a 10-hour version of that movie, I bet I would have loved every second of it. In my opinion, this movie could be the best Batman movie, if not the best comic book movie ever made. Before watching the rest of the video, go see this movie. The rest of the video contains spoilers, and I really believe it is best to go in completely blind. This film is beautiful. I've said it already and I'll say it a million times over. Greg Fraser made true art with this film. Half the shots in this film had me giddy like a child getting their first Batman toy from a Happy Meal. The first shot I want to talk about happens early on in the film when the Riddler murders Mayor Mitchell. Riddler appears behind Mitchell completely in darkness, only revealed once the TV flashes some light on him. It feels straight from a horror scene and I love it. You get the feeling that Riddler had been standing there the whole time, but you only notice him lurking in the dark once he is revealed. The mix of tension and fear you get from the scene is amazing. I was utterly terrified when I saw it, but still couldn't wipe the smile off my face because it was the moment I knew this movie was everything I hoped it was. It is a perfect introduction to the tone and feel of this film. The second scene I want to talk about is the Penguin chase. Mostly just the end though, I will talk about the Batmobile later. Not only was it an exciting action set piece, it was also completely beautiful. When Batman started moving towards the Penguin's car with the fire behind him, I couldn't stop myself from shaking with joy from the sight of it. It was set up perfectly. It felt like Batman was an unstoppable force leaving a wake of fire behind him wherever he went, and the upside down camera angle only added to the shot's beauty. It puts you right with Penguin, who can see nothing but fire and vengeance moving towards him. I wanted the sheer awe of that moment to last an eternity. Honestly, I still would have been extremely happy if the movie was only that shot and nothing else. Just like the Riddler shot at the beginning of the movie, it is just something that once you see gets instantly ingrained in your mind permanently. The last shot I want to talk about is when Batman is leading civilians out of the flooded stadium with his flare. This scene, and one shot in particular, could perfectly encapsulate Batman's arc during this film. He starts as a symbol of fear and vengeance meant to scare criminals off the street and make them think twice before committing a crime. In this scene, he becomes a symbol of hope that will help and guide the people of Gotham when they are at their lowest. The contrast of the red flare mixed with the almost black of the water gives off a beautiful aesthetic. In this scene, no words are said. The soundtrack completely takes over, yet you still get all the triumphant emotion that is Batman becoming a hero for the people of Gotham City. If I had to pick one moment from the movie to really showcase how well it was crafted, I think it would be that scene. Robert Pattinson is an amazing Batman. He plays the character so well. He can convey a full range of emotions without ever speaking a word. You could probably mute the sound but still get all the emotion just by looking for Pattinson's glances and facial expressions. During most of the funeral season, Bruce doesn't even talk, but you still know exactly what he's thinking. He sees himself in the little boy and then turns on autopilot once the car crashes through the door. When everyone else is ducking in fear of the bomb strapped around Coulson's neck, Bruce stays standing with an unflinching and immovable glare at the man with the bomb. He is in complete Batman mode at that moment and I love it. Somehow Matt Reeves made Batman feel like an invincible and unstoppable monster, but at the same time, the most human version of the character we've ever seen. While Bale's Batman is more physically realistic, I would argue that Pattinson gets the emotion much better. This is a year 2 Batman. He's not the grizzled veteran Batman who's completely in control of every situation like we are used to seeing in a lot of mediums. This Batman is young and unstable. He hasn't fully molded into the hero of Gotham just yet, and it shows. Batman gets angry and he brutalizes his enemies. He walks through waves of bullets without care for his own well-being. He isn't afraid to die. He tells that to Alfred himself. This Batman is hell-bent on his mission and really doesn't care about much else. And I think that shows in Bruce Wayne. While a lot of people have disliked this depiction of Bruce Wayne because he isn't the playboy and he's very mopey and kind of depressed, I actually really like it, and I think it's somewhere to grow and kind of form the character we're used to. Bruce in this film is only really used when Batman needs to go somewhere he can as Batman. He doesn't care about having a life or being the head of Wayne Enterprises. He only cares about being the Batman. And I think this makes sense. He's hell-bent on this mission. He only cares about fulfilling his parents' legacy by trying to rid the streets of crime. I think the true arc of Batman in this movie is going from being this vengeance-obsessed vigilante to being a justice-seeking hero. Vengeance is the rage that fills Bruce constantly, the undying need to punish those who are guilty, those who prey upon the innocent and defenseless. Vengeance is about punishing the guilty, while justice is about helping the victim, really. Batman cannot save Gotham by eliminating crime and punching his way through the city's underworld. He can only save Gotham by making sure those in power are there for the right reasons and that the good people of the city are willing to fight for what is right. The corruption and criminals Batman fights exist because the people of the city have lost all will to combat them. By the end of the movie, Batman becomes a symbol of hope that reignites the people's will to fight. Batman in this movie is scary. He feels inhuman. Every step, with his boots, thunder like a monster is walking through the darkness. Bullets feel like they don't even faze him. He tosses around goons like they were toys, but he never really feels like he's too strong. Sometimes his confidence and fearlessness gets him into trouble, like in the end fight when he gets shot with a shotgun by a Riddler follower and he almost dies. It's a perfect balance between unstoppable and human. The Batmobile in this film is gorgeous. The Tumbler felt like a military tank, and Keaton's car felt straight from a comic, but Batman's Batmobile feels cobbled together in a cave with scrap metal, which I think was really the intention. Its sleek design and visible rivets make it feel completely real and plausible, but still extremely authentic to something like the Batman comics. I saw the movie in IMAX, and the roar of the Batmobile's engine made my heart pound. Even when I rewatched it not in IMAX, that scene still got me giddy. The entire time it was on screen, my eyes were wide with just pure excitement and childish joy. This movie is everything I want it to be, and just so much more. The movie makes me want to buy every Batman action figure and Lego set and make a room solely dedicated to those things. With the last live-action Batman being a blatant murderer and having little resemblance to the character beyond the suit, it's nice to see Batman be played and created by people who truly care and understand the character. Paul Dano is wonderfully insane as the Riddler. He is up there with the great villain performances like Ledger's Joker and Brolin's Thanos. He captures everything that I loved about the Riddler from comics and games while adding his own personal flair to the character. The Riddler in this movie is completely deranged. He acts like a child who thinks they know everything and lashes out in a tantrum when things don't go exactly how they planned it. Riddler is a perfect mix of Zodiac killer and horror villain. His murders are sporadic and filled with emotion. He's visibly weak. He puts every ounce of strength into every blow he lands. There's no part of this movie where you feel like Riddler isn't in control, and that's what I love about this movie. Batman technically loses at the end of the film. The city is flooded, several public officials are dead, and Carmine Falcone is no longer alive. He can't reveal the corruption or pay for his crimes. Riddler always feels like he is one piece away from completely solving the entire puzzle. I love the tension built when Riddler is revealed to maybe know Batman's identity. It is something you can totally believe would happen, and I wouldn't really be surprised if it did happen. I completely love Riddler's interrogation with every ounce of my being. I know it kind of, feels a little bit like a copy of, Joker's interrogation, but I think it's definitely different enough that it feels pretty new and varied. It feels like each second of the scene was handcrafted and always had a specific intention. Watching Batman's face as he slowly puts together all the pieces that have been laid out throughout the movie is incredibly captivating. Riddler's subsequent tantrum when he finds out that Batman isn't on his side is also amazing acting on Dana's part. Batman is the one missing puzzle piece that Riddler failed to grasp. Riddler made his whole plan thinking that Batman was one piece that perfectly fit in and brought together the rest of the puzzle, but in reality, Batman was the one piece that didn't fit, the one oversight in Riddler's masterpiece of a plan. Riddler did inspire change by the end of the film, but not the kind of change that he really wanted. He wanted anarchy, wanted a change by force. Instead of making Gotham City pay for forgetting him and the other orphans and allowing corruption to still lead, he practically saved Gotham in a way by changing a vigilante into a true hero. Without the Riddler, Batman would never have seen the sins of Gotham's past and the corruption that runs deep within the city's veins. Riddler's rampage makes Batman understand that it's not enough to scare the guilty, but he really needs to inspire the innocent and the righteous. The Riddler almost feels like Batman if he had blamed Gotham for his parents' death, and instead of trying to make sure it never happened to anyone else, he wanted to burn down the institution that allowed for such a thing to happen. The one solid concept that is integral to Batman and separates him from characters like the Riddler is that he doesn't truly want revenge. He wants justice. He doesn't want a world where nothing bad ever happens to him. He wants
a world where no 8-year-old boy will ever lose his parents because of some punk with a gun.
He cares for others far more than himself, contrasted against the Riddler who only cares for himself. He only cares that things always go his way, and at the slightest miscalculation or mix-up, he becomes enraged and starts to scream. When he talks to Batman in the prison, Riddler starts trying to drown Batman out once he starts hearing anything he doesn't want to hear. Paul Dano perfectly portrays Riddler as a neglected and warped child desperately seeking attention and to be remembered. Never again does Edward Nashman want to be forgotten like he was in that orphanage. And I think he gives a perfect twist to the Riddler that we know. Riddler has always wanted to be famous in all of the comics, but instead of it being ego, now it's a deep-rooted trauma of being forgotten as a child. So I think it just gives a new layer of depth to the character. First off, take a look at these two versions of Gotham City. Now tell me, which one looks like a gothic and urban hellscape where every inch is lined with a thick layer of grime and dirt, where crime lurks in every alley? And tell me which one looks like a normal city. I absolutely love Gotham in the Batman. One of the very few issues that me and many others had with the Nolan trilogy is that Gotham feels kind of bland. There's nothing that separates Gotham from a real city like Chicago or Pittsburgh in those movies. And that was probably intentional based on the realism that Nolan was trying to capture, but it just didn't feel like Batman. You don't get the feeling that the city needs a caped hero who will spend his life fighting an unending war against crime. The Batman is completely different. The city feels as much of a character as Batman and Riddler. The city feels like it is closing in on the inhabitants, which is why everyone desperately wants to leave the city all the time. Past Gothams didn't feel like they had the structure for Batman to be able to move around completely undetected, but this one does. The city's covered in dark corners, gargoyles, underpasses, small alleyways. I also love how much it rains in the new Gotham. It gives a beautiful look while also instilling the idea that no matter how much water washes through the city, the dirt that is the crime and the corruption will not go away. It'll never be cleaned off. I said it about multiple parts of this movie, but Gotham really does feel ripped straight off the page or out of a game. Just watching some of the panning shots of Gotham reminded me of gliding through it in Arkham Knight. In all forms of Batman media, the attention to Gotham gets as much or more attention as Batman himself. This is the first time since the Narrows of Batman Begins that kind of thought is being put into the famous city. With a character like Superman, the design of Metropolis isn't really important. You put Superman in any city on the planet, his goal will most likely to be the same. He wants to save people and be a hero. Batman is different. His entire character is interlocked with Gotham itself. Batman's goal is to rid Gotham of crime. Not any other city, not the world, Gotham. Batman's goal is impossible, and he knows it is, because Gotham breeds crime. It is in its very nature. In order to make Batman a compelling character, you need to make Gotham look unsavable. Matt Reeves did exactly that. He makes a Gotham that makes you ask if Batman is really having any effect. He makes a Gotham where you ask yourself if Riddler's form of justice is the only kind that can truly make a change to it. He makes a city that won't get better with more violence, but will only improve with hope and with compassion. Michael Giacchino is on his A game with this movie, maybe even his A+ game. He has quickly become one of my favorite composers in the past few years. This is not his first time working with Matt Reeves, and it shows. Every song fits the movie perfectly. It feels like scenes were crafted with Giacchino's score exactly in mind. Some songs are dark and gritty like the Riddler, and some songs are heroic like a majority of the Batman. I don't often find myself compelled to go back and listen to soundtracks of games or movies completely on their own, but from the instant I left the theater, I've felt the need to listen to the soundtrack for every second that I can. There's never a moment where an instrument feels out of place or the score is overbearing on the dialogue. I think that one thing that many movie viewers overlook is the score. We never think about how integral the score is to conveying the emotion that the movie wants us to feel. Imagine your favorite movie without any music. Serious scenes could feel comical, and feel-good scenes could feel eerie. Giacchino does a masterful job of getting every song to express the exact feeling that fits with the scene it is over. Instead of just talking about the score as a whole, I want to focus on one song, Highway to the Anger Zone. This song conveys so much emotion and intensity that I would be able to get a general overview of what scene it played over, even if I knew nothing about the movie. The song is a perfect mix between the anxiety that Penguin feels over being chased and the rage and excitement of Batman racing after him in pursuit. The song makes me want to check around my shoulder every second, and also makes me want to drive as fast as possible while ignoring traffic laws, all at the same time. I was blown away by Giacchino's ability to switch the mood of the song pretty much on a dime without losing any of the impact of the emotion. I think the main arc of the movie is represented through most of the music. This film is dark and gritty, sometimes even horror-esque, but there's always some hope. At its core, The Batman is an origin movie, not of Batman himself, but of Batman being a hero, Batman becoming a symbol of hope instead of a symbol of fear. It's the origin of Batman the hero instead of Batman the vigilante. I think that The Batman might just be my favorite Batman movie ever. The Dark Knight is an amazing film that has many great performances, mainly Heath Ledger's Joker, but The Batman makes up for a few shortcomings that movie has, along with a main villain that I might say rivals that film's Joker. At its core, I feel that The Dark Knight is a movie about its villains. Heath Ledger and Two-Face, they really kind of steal the show. Batman's there, and Bale does a great job performing as Batman, but when you think about that movie, you think about the villains. At its core, The Batman is a Batman movie. There's not really a scene that goes by without Batman in it, or without Batman on his way to wherever that scene is taking place. The Batman's Gotham is more alive and filthy. It feels like the Gotham that we read about in the comics. And the action in The Batman is top tier. Christopher Nolan never really figured out how to show Batman fighting. Bale's Batman's fighting style was pretty boring and fairly slow, often also butchered by way too many quick cuts. Nolan's Batman's fighting felt too realistic. It made it feel implausible that he could take on these large groups of people, or that he could, go around fighting crime every night. He fought like a normal skilled person, but it just didn't feel like you would have been able to do these kind of superhuman feats of fighting large waves of people every night. But Pattinson's Batman, he feels like a monster. Batman is brutal and fast. The action takes place in these long, beautiful shots instead of quick cuts. I just think that these few things give the newest Batman a leg up on the longtime champion of Batman movies. If you for some reason watch this video without having seen this movie, watch it. Please watch it. I promise that you won't regret it. My description and my retelling really just doesn't do the film its full justice. If you have seen it, watch it again and again. Show DC that these are the kinds of movies that we want to see, not their rushed attempts at putting together a cinematic universe or their constant attempts to follow Marvel's success. Show DC that they should keep giving movies to directors with vision, like Matt Reeves and James Gunn. Show them that we want more movies like this, because the Batman is beautiful.